Good morning, gamers. All right, so yeah, it's morning where I am, so feeling pretty good. Hope you are too. Let's take a look at another play style, and this play style, it's something you got to deal with as a GM, whether you GM professionally or just GM like most of us do and always have, uh, just because you're the GM, whether you love it or whether you feel like you're stuck as the forever GM. But from time to time, you may have had to deal with the Blame the DM play style. So today we're doing part one of the Blame the DM play style, the Ragequitter. And there's a pretty good example of a Ragequitter. The story has to do with shields, and that's why our picture today is shields. There has, it has to do with shields. But there was a gentleman in one of my paid games, and this was 5th edition D&D, and he claimed to have a 35 armor class once combat started. And there have been previous editions of D&D, and there's been like 1st edition Pathfinder where numbers got a little crazy. But even so, that's why I mentioned this was 5th edition D&D, where numbers do not, in most cases, hardly ever get that crazy. So yeah, 35 armor class in 5th edition D&D. But even in those previous editions where numbers got a little crazy, usually numbers weren't that crazy. So, I did an armor class audit of this guy, to try to figure out where he was getting his 35 armor class from. And he claimed that he had, not only did he have a shield, but he had a shield on his other arm and was counting that towards his armor class. And he had a flying shield, which is something that's in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. There is a flying shield magic item that flies around and blocks for you. And he was applying, and all three of these shields had hefty pluses on them. And plus he had some armor. And he was basically applying his armor, magical shield pluses from his main shield, magical shield pluses from his offhand shield, and magical shield pluses from the flying shield. And, it should be pretty obvious, I think, to most people that, since, yes, I try to simulate things with D&D. I've gotten into a few arguments with people as to whether D&D really simulates things or not. Since I put that video up. But regardless, it is, whether it's a simulation or not, it's a simulation game, and there's a gaming element. And in the game, most of us realize that one shield counts to your armor class. It's kind of like slots in a video game character sheet or character screen, where you can only fit one thing in a slot. So there's a shield slot for your character. So I told him he could count the most powerful shield, but the other shields just don't count towards his armor class. And he argued, and he fought. And then I explained that, see, if the world actually worked like this, you may have heard me talk before, it's one of the main things I teach here at GM Academy, is that if any kind of rules or ruling comes into conflict with the world wins every time. Because if it's the world we love, the world that we enjoy in novels and comic books and video games, and just think about Forgotten Realms and all of the media Forgotten Realms is in. It's in novels and comics and video games. There's I think the D&D movie that's out in theaters right now takes place in Forgotten Realms. So if a given ruling doesn't create if you think about how it doesn't create the Forgotten Realms the way we love it, then it's the rules that need to change, not the Forgotten Realms. So if it really worked this way, if there was a universe where having more shields like this was better, then no one would ever pick up a sword again. No one would ever pick up a dagger or a mace or a spear. Basically what would happen if there was a young lad in a warlike society where they taught young people to fight, kind of like Sparta, but if some father looked at his son and saw that his son was playing around with a sword, he'd be like, "Oh no, son, put that sword down and put this shield on on your other arm. Oh, see there, you've got 2 shields. Say, son, do you have shields on your knees? Here, put these shields on your knees. I mean, if it was true and if things really worked like that in that universe, then whole armies would go to war and each soldier would just be covered in shields. I mean, it would be nuts. So this guy, he rage quit, and it was a 4-hour session. We do 4-hour sessions. If you'd like to game with us, there's links down below where you can get on one of those 4-hour sessions yourself. They're only $20 per player, so that's $5 an hour to actually get me to DM with you and other people who game with me. Hopefully not, well, this guy got banned later on, but for other behavior, but so it's not this guy anymore. But in the early days when I was first doing this, it was during the COVID times, and I was unemployed because my job had disappeared, and so I was forced to do this full-time right away. I didn't get to ease into it, and so I had to just accept some crazy players just to have enough people to pay my bills. But we'll continue with that another time. But so this guy, he came back about an hour later because it was a 4-hour session, and he said, Matt Mercer says John is right. So apparently he said, I don't know, I don't go on Twitter looking for Matt Mercer, but he claimed that Matt Mercer is famous for being available on Twitter to the public a lot. And so, I mean, either he is personally, or maybe people on his staff or faculty or whatever, they're at his company. I'm sure somebody's available on Twitter then, whether it's personally him or not. But he apparently this guy had contacted Matt Mercer on Twitter, explained the situation to him about the shields and everything, and I guess Matt Mercer backed me up and said I was right. Not that I need Matt Mercer to back me up and say that I'm right, because a DM is always right at his or her own table, but it was a little gratifying. He comes back an hour later and he's like, yeah, Matt Mercer said John was right. And so, I mean, he paid for the session. I mean, he was gone for an hour doing his rage quit thing. But yeah, I let him finish the session because he was crowing around that, yeah, I contacted Matt Mercer. Matt Mercer talks to me, and Matt Mercer said John was right. But yeah, so this has been part 1 of the Blame the DM play style. We'll do part 2 tomorrow, and part 2 is a little preview. Part 2 is going to get into another YouTube channel, not in a bad way, but there's another story coming up tomorrow where it's recently been brought to my attention that another player that we've had, and I've had almost 450 professional games now with StartPlaying.games, paid games, full-time paid Dungeon Master, but apparently another player who practices this Blame the DM play style told a story to which important facts are missing that I will supply tomorrow, but told a story about a game they played with us here at Game Shop's Basement, and left out some crucial facts. And so there's actually, so we're famous now. There's actually a game out there of ours, a game session we had in our community, the Game Shop's Basement Grumpy Old GM's community, that is actually now a horror story on one of those gaming horror story YouTube channels. So tomorrow I will set the facts straight and tell you, like old Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. In the meantime, if you'd like to game with us, there's links down below. If you'd like to attend GM Academy, there's Patreon down below for that. There's social media and Discord just to say hello. I guess Discord is a form of social media. But anyway, in the meantime, I'll see you around the gaming table.